Curtis Warren's reputation as Britain's most notorious drug trafficker is now established beyond doubt. He's about to begin his second long jail sentence. He was caught just 3 weeks after finishing the first. Throughout his trial, massive security surrounded his daily arrival and departure from court. It was never revealed if the guns were to stop him escaping or protect him from old rivals. The plan was to smuggle cannabis into Jersey, £1 million worth, but Warren boasted that it was just a little starter. This was the plot. Warren's contacts in Amsterdam were to supply the drugs. The gang would drive them through Belgium and France to the Normandy coast, then a speedboat would bring them to Jersey. This secluded cove on the east of the island was to be the landing spot. Cannabis sells for a high price on Jersey's streets. Your streets, the jurors were told. Warren, who's from Liverpool, was the mastermind, the man with the clout and influence, said the prosecution.
Well, he's a prolific criminal, and this was just the start of what we thought was going to be another build-up to more significant trafficking in the past. £1 million worth is a lot of money, which you can then invest in other forms of drugs, buying drugs and supplying drugs.
The plot emerged when Jersey police bugged the phone boxes Warren used to call his drug contacts in Holland. They put a listening device in the VW Golf he used to cruise the island for hours. The police illegally bugged a red Citroën the gang hired on the continent. The French had refused permission for the bug. Warren's defence was simple. The police had fitted him up. Because of who he was, they were out to get him at any cost. He said they used a Dutch informant to lure him into conversations that were misinterpreted. To back his argument, defence lawyer Stephen Baker revealed Warren's past. 16 years ago in Newcastle, he was acquitted in the lead ingot case. Massive amounts of cocaine were hidden in metal blocks. 4 years later, he was convicted of a similar plot in Holland. This time, the drugs hidden in concrete blocks. In a fight at a Dutch jail, Warren killed a fellow prisoner. He was the subject of a best-selling book. The Sunday Times Rich List acknowledged Warren's fortune, though it attributed it to property deals.
What he's been is a purveyor in misery for countless people, not just those that are addicted to drugs, obviously, but to those that have been victims of addicts when they're trying to find the price of the next fix. He wasn't concerned with that. He was just concerned with the money that he made dealing in this merchandise.
Warren faces up to 14 years in prison. The islanders will be glad to see the back of him and the daily disruption to their lives. Martin Brunt, Sky News, on Jersey.
He was Interpol's most wanted man, and as he arrived on island turf in June 2007, Jersey police made it their mission to catch him. They began tailing Curtis Warren and his co-conspirators after a tip-off from the Serious Organised Crime Agency. The gang were hatching a plot to import 180 kilos of cannabis into the island. They hired a car in St Malo to drive to Holland, pick up the drugs, head back to France via Belgium, then ferry the drugs to Jersey using a private boat. Jersey police arranged to bug the car with a listening and tracking device. Conversations were used in court, which eventually led to Warren and his gang being convicted.
It's £1,000, yes. 1 9-bar, yeah. One bar, yeah. £160 for 1 ounce. Between 50 and 60 kilo would take about 4 weeks to get all your money.
But the recordings were illegal. Jersey police didn't have permission by France, Belgium or Holland to bug the car. They even told the officer who fitted the device to lie to the French police about what she was doing. Unsure of the legality of their actions, they sought advice from this man, Crown Advocate Matthew Jowett. He said,
"Ultimately, it's an operational matter. If it were me, I'd go ahead and do it. But don't quote me."
Warren's legal team argued this devilry and misconduct amounted to an abuse of process and that all convictions should be quashed. Today, the law lords didn't agree, but they did issue a damning verdict on the actions of Jersey police.
The board emphasises its strong disapproval of the police misconduct in this case. They were guilty of sustained and deliberate law-breaking. The outcome of this appeal should not be seen to condone their conduct. Repetition of misconduct of this kind in the future might well lead to a different outcome.
Reacting to that verdict, the police chief wouldn't be drawn on that criticism.
We're very pleased that Curtis Warren and 5 other men who conspired to smuggle cannabis with a street value of more than £1 million into Jersey are to remain in prison and serve out their sentences for their crimes.
Mr Barron, though, the laws were quite critical of the police. Do you
I'm
accept
sorry,
that?
I can't take questions at this juncture. We need to analyse the findings of the judges, and I'll come back to you after we've done that. Thank you very much indeed.
The illegal tactics in gathering evidence against Warren will now be investigated by Hampshire Police, and that could result in disciplinary action. So, as Warren's conviction remains intact, the same may not be said of the force's reputation.
They're amongst the most experienced lawyers in the country, acting for one of the most notorious criminals, Curtis Warren, cocky to his friends. But it's not just Warren's freedom that's at stake. The reputation of Jersey Police has also been damaged. The atmosphere in court today was more relaxed, despite the suggestion the entire criminal justice system had been tainted. After almost 2 hours, Lord Hope brought the hearing to an end.
I think we've made the point quite frequently that there are numerous cases where, for one reason or another, evidence is improperly obtained.
Yes.
And if one's going to have to face an abuse of process argument every time that happens, it would really be quite ridiculous.
It's a moral dilemma the Privy Council now face. Either let Curtis Warren and associates walk free or agree with Sir Richard Tucker that it's OK to allow illegally obtained evidence to stand in court. But whatever verdict the Privy Council come back with regarding Curtis and his associates, irreputable damage has been done to Jersey's police force. Today, at the Supreme Court, the island's Attorney General announced an independent inquiry would go ahead.
We've always acknowledged and indeed made full disclosure of the fact that mistakes were made at the investigatory stage in this particular case. And that's indeed why the Chief Officer of Police has announced, I think today, that there will be an inquiry by Hampshire Constabulary into that.
Jersey Police said the integrity of their officers was non-negotiable and hoped the Hampshire inquiry would provide a fresh perspective and thorough independent analysis.
For a few tantalizing moments last month, Curtis "Cocky" Warren appeared to be on the verge of breaking the habit of a lifetime. Throughout his career masterminding an organized criminal gang that had amassed more than £200 million from drug deals, he had always refused to give evidence at any of his trials. It didn't matter whether he was in the dock for armed robbery, overseeing a 1,000 kilograms shipment of cocaine, smuggling cannabis, guns, hand grenades or CS gas, or even kicking a fellow prisoner to death. Warren resolutely declined the offer to defend himself from the witness box. Instead, the former bouncer, from Liverpool, would exercise his right to remain silent rather than be cross-examined. Occasionally, the tactic had worked for him and he'd walked free. More often than not he had been jailed because he was invariably guilty as charged. In the run-up to yet another court case last month, however, Warren, who has been in prison for the past 17 years, announced that he was considering submitting to questioning for the first time under oath. His apparent newfound belief in the law was not born out of a desire to defend his not-so-good name. Instead, the drug baron, who has featured in the Sunday Times rich list of Britain's 500 wealthiest people, wanted to protect the thing he holds most dear: his money. He once boasted, "If I spent 50 grand a day, I wouldn't go broke." His drugs network, said to have links to narcotic cartels around the world, was at one time so lucrative that his henchmen apparently travelled regularly from Liverpool to London with holdalls containing thousands in cash in order to launder the money. His operation was believed to be making him millions of pounds a week. So what revelation did Warren, 50, want to share with the Jersey Royal Court hearing that opened last month to consider confiscating his proceeds from crime? He just wanted to reveal that he was on his uppers, penniless, a pauper. Claims that he has amassed a remarkable wealth are, according to his lawyers, ridiculous. There was one slight problem. He could not get an assurance from the UK authorities that any evidence he gave to prove he was broke would not be used in further prosecutions against him or his gang in the future. And so he shied away, refusing to enter the witness box to explain just how he had lost so much money. Now Warren faces a difficult dilemma. Last week, the hearing in the Channel Islands ended and he was told he must hand over £198 million in Europe's biggest ever criminal confiscation order, or face another 10 years in jail. If he coughs up his ill-gotten gains, he can end his time as a Category A prisoner and walk free from his Jersey jail in January.
Curtis Warren was a notorious convicted drug trafficker who once killed a fellow prisoner. His name was known to every drug squad in Britain. The jury heard all that from his own lawyer. There was even a book about him, he said, and he'd featured on the Sunday Times Rich List. His barrister, Stephen Baker, said the authorities were desperate to get Warren, and Jersey police, he said, must have been very excited when he turned up on the island. Armed police are guarding Warren into and away from court. The narrow streets of the island's capital are being closed off at the start and finish of each court session. Everyone going into the building is thoroughly searched and scanned. The jurors are under police surveillance to and from court. This was the plot. Warren's contacts in Amsterdam were to supply the drug, said the prosecutor. The gang would drive the cannabis through France to the Normandy coast, then smuggle it by speedboats to Jersey. One of the defendants, James O'Brien, had been convicted of a similar plot 7 years ago, it was said. He'd agreed to do it again. Prosecutor Howard Sharp said this was a case about organised crime. A conspiracy to sell drugs on the streets of Jersey. Your streets, he told the jurors. He said it was Curtis Warren, 46 and from Liverpool, who pulled the strings, directing the drug dealers in Jersey and Holland. He said, Warren has a light touch. You won't see him handling the drugs or shipping bags of cash around. He leaves such chores, the truly risky part of the drugs business, to others lower down the food chain. Warren was cautious. He often remained in shadow, rarely stepping out into the light. Warren stayed with a girlfriend in St Helier. He made dozens of calls from public telephone boxes. Often, it was said, to his drugs contacts in Holland. Allegedly, he spent hours driving around the island with a co-defendant. They didn't know the police had bugged their car. According to the prosecution, Warren and one of his co-defendants drove here to the east of the island, looking for somewhere to land their drugs. And they identified a secluded cove below that headland, just a short boat ride from the French coast. The trial is expected to last a month, by which time the people of Jersey should be used to this daily interruption to their lives.